It's trade season. Multiple deals already have gone down and more are coming leading up to that NFL trade deadline. Here are the big time candidates and the teams that absolutely have to trade for them, along with some other teams to watch. There are some rumors floating around that Sauce Gardner could be that star player dealt by the NFL trade deadline. You wonder, are they just silly rumors, people making stuff up? But there's also some legit reports that teams believe the Jets would be willing to trade off just about any player by the deadline for the right price, of course. So you put those reports together and just how crazy the NFL is these days, especially with these trades, and you go, there's a possibility, and I've specifically heard some rumors, again, could just be rumors, about the Detroit Lions looking at Sauce Gardner. Now, the Lions don't have a ton of future cap space, so they do have to be careful. They have a lot this year, and they can have some of that roll over. The good news is Sauce Gardner doesn't cost a ton this year or next year. It's more long-term future. And a team like the Lions could kind of worry about that down the line, but this team is a little beat up, very beat up at the cornerback position right now. They have his former teammate, corner, DJ Reed, a little banged up. He'll be back at some point, but the Lions right now should be all in. I mean, this team looks like the best team in football as we speak. The rest of the roster is great. They could just be a big-time corner away from being that much more of a contender and that Super Bowl champion of this season. So I would be on board with the Lions making this type of move. I'm not a huge, trade super valuable pick, especially for a corner. I do it for an edge rusher. I'm not really that type of guy, but the Lions, this could be their year, and they could be a corner away just because, all those injuries on top of it. And I look at the Rams, and there's a little bit of a connection there. And you kind of go to the past where the Rams traded for Jalen Ramsey. They made that big splash trade that was maybe a little unlike them. Maybe it would be a little unlike them right now to trade for Sauce Gardner, and that was absolutely huge for them. Ramsey was playing his best ball for the Rams. That defense really was elevated when they got that big time corner. Brad Holmes was on the staff then. Now he's the Lions general manager. So there's a little bit of a connection there. And it would really, for either team, it would really remind me of the Rams trade and making that splash trade for Jalen Ramsey and then taking that next step. Both these teams have a window. These teams, it's hard to say they'll be contending for a Super Bowl when their quarterbacks are pretty much done, years from now. Right now, they are legit contenders, especially with a big-time corner. So I'd be all on board with these teams making the move, and they could make it happen, too. The Lions, again, a little thin on future cap space, but again, Gardner a little cheaper right now and next year, so they can worry about that when the time comes. Just focus on winning that Super Bowl right now because you are in that window. Other teams I'd say to watch that could monitor the situation, the Eagles badly need a corner. Should they go all out and trade valuable picks for a big corner you have to pay big money to? You already have Quinyon Mitchell. Yes, they do need another corner, but the Eagles made some questionable trades this offseason, which is surprising given Howie Roseman's track record, and they were mainly small trades, but I kind of question their approach this offseason in general. So should they be, the way they're playing right now, too, do they need to do more roster building besides just making one splash trade? We'll see. I don't know if I would fully recommend it, but watch for them. The Colts are supposed to be buyers at the deadline. They could use a corner. There's some talk about a pass rusher. They're not desperate for one, but a corner is something they could use. Xavier Howard decided to retire out of nowhere. If they get banged up and they're in trouble, so they could be looking to make a splash move like this. Dark horse teams, the Seattle Seahawks, if they continue to stay or get beat up at corner, I don't know if they'll value the position this much, when they already have a guy like Witherspoon and they do like Josh Jobe as well. And the Raiders could, badly need a stud corner for the future. They have that future spending money, and it's, they're not a contender, but this is Sauce Gardner can help a team now and long term, so it could make some sense for the Raiders. But again, should they be in business of making this type of splash move the way they're playing this year? But a team like the Lions and the Rams, they should show some interest here because it can help them win that Super Bowl this year. Ravens tight end Mark Andrews. If you remember, there was some trade talks in the offseason that got quiet, and now they are sparking up. At least the rumors are sparking up again, and that's for multiple reasons. I think the big one, Isaiah Likely back from injury. He's going to start ramping up more and more, especially when Lamar comes back. Andrews on an expiring deal. The Ravens didn't want to give him a new deal. Maybe they want to get something for him right now while they can. I mean, they'd eventually get a compensatory pick. And the Ravens are struggling, so could they sell some pieces off? I really don't think they're going to give up. They're going to be back in the mix of things, at least in my opinion, as long as they get fairly healthy, which they should get healthier. But Andrews is definitely one to watch in a team. And what would he go for? That's kind of the question, because teams would offer a third or a fourth. I don't see them offering more than a third. Would they even offer that? And then is it worth it for the Ravens? They're not going to get a second. Maybe that's what it'll take for them to actually unload him, but they're not going to get that. So that's kind of the big question here. If I'm the Chargers, I strongly consider this. They already did make a trade with the Ravens to get Olave away. They like to hang on to their picks, so do they, make a deal here without getting, maybe it's a swap deal so they can get a later pick back. It's definitely possible, but yeah, they're really beat up, so that's mainly their issue right now, especially on the offensive line. There's rarely any solid offensive lineman available, even decent offensive lineman available via trade, so there's really no notable ones right now. But tight end plays been a little underwhelming. I thought Tyler Conklin would be a little bit better. He had a brutal drop last week on 4th down. That was pretty crucial. Not that one play is going to decide if he's done and they're getting a new tight end, but this could make them that much better. And there's also that Greg Roman connection, so he's an instant plug-and-play fit because obviously he's the offense coordinator. He was the offense coordinator for the Ravens. So, and you just get another option that is a solid pass. They have plenty of pass catchers, but that also can play in line, with those linemen, and maybe help in the blocking game. That's where his elite play has been, obviously. Not that he's elite anymore, but I think the Chargers just make a lot of sense. And for me, that's what this video is about. Who, in my opinion, who do I think teams should be going for? That's one that really stands out. The Eagles, yes, they have Dallas Goedert. He's been a little banged up. They're feeding him a ton. I think they're trying to go more 12 personnel, more tight ends on the field at once, but they just don't have the bodies, the correct players to do it. And there was some talk about them moving on from Goddard in the offseason, maybe this next offseason. So maybe they give Andrews a try, and their offense is struggling right now. That can give them a boost. The more I'm talking about, the more it makes sense. Eagles made some questionable trades already. Should they be in the market? They'll probably will make more trades. The Broncos, if Evan Ingram could start ramping things up, then, they probably stay away. But if this team added a caliber tight end like Mark Andrews, it'd give him a much bigger boost here offensively, which it's been a little stale at times. It feels like they're starting to get going. And then more so dark horse teams not counting on it. The Rams, they got a number of tight ends. Remember, they have Tyler Higbee. They drafted Terrence Ferguson, and they wanted to try to go more 12 personnel, multiple tight ends on the field at once compared to the past. And that really hasn't worked out yet. Higbee's been a little underwhelming. Ferguson, made a super nice catch. Was that last week? But you haven't really seen a ton of him. I'm sure that'll increase. But if they really are desperate to give these different looks, maybe go get a tight end. Then you don't have to worry about a pricey contract long term. In the Jags, Brenton Strange was looking pretty good, but he went down, going to be out for at least 5 weeks. They have other options at tight end, but they're rolling right now. Maybe they want to keep rolling. They want to make sure this offense doesn't miss a beat. They want to keep progressing. So possibly more of a dark horse team. I think they like the guys they have, and then when Strange comes back, they'll use him. But you never know. They're going to take a hit without Strange. So maybe another team to watch there. I'd say more so the Chargers and Eagles. The more I was talking, sometimes I do these videos as I'm talking. I like the Eagles a lot more. Maybe the Broncos are maybe in the dark horse range here. But an interesting big-time tight end trade candidate to watch leading up to that deadline. We talked about Bengals pass rusher Trey Hendrickson in the last trade deadline video. Kind of going to get my opinion on who should actually trade for him. But first, the Bengals just traded for Joe Flacco, so they're trying to save their season. They're trying to be all in. So I don't think they're going to ship Hendrickson off ASAP. If they continue to lose, which is very possible, at the deadline, they could look to move him because they don't want to do this all again. They obviously don't want to extend him right now. They just readjusted his contract where he's still a free agent this offseason, so move him for something solid right now. They're going to get less than what they would have got before the season, so that's unfortunate. That's how it's going to be. Second round pick, maybe a swap, a second. they give up a later pick, or maybe it's a third-round pick just because we're halfway through the year and it could be a rental for a team. Is it worth it for the Bengals? But if I'm the Niners, if I'm the Commanders, I look to do this. Not only do I love the fits there, but a guy like Hendrickson, because the fit, how good he is, and what those teams need right now, it could give them that much-needed boost to contend even more. The Niners are legit, even though they're super beat up. They're going to get healthier. You add Hendrickson in there to replace Nick Bosa because he's injured. I mean, that gives them a major, major boost, and it's such a well-coached team. They were with Shanahan already, and now they got Robert Saleh back in there, and it's just such a well-coached team in general, across the board there. So they could contend if they get a guy like this. It looks like a legit team right now, surprising some people. And the Commanders, really the only knock on them is they can't consistently get after the quarterback. They're thin off the edge. They were going into the year. It feels like that even more so now with a guy like Dietrich Weiss going down a few weeks ago or earlier in the year. So adding a guy like Hendrickson, perfect fit for Dan Quinn, and that could really elevate them. Other teams to watch, the Colts have been a team to watch since in the offseason because the Lou Anarumo connection. The Colts are supposed to be buyers at the deadline. They could be all in. So I most definitely could see the Colts trading for him. I'm not going to sit here and say they absolutely should trade for him. They have a number of pass rushers that are playing fairly well. They get better with Hendrickson. They could use one of those pass rushers to trade for him. So maybe they don't have to trade a pick or a third-round pick in that player, perhaps. Just an example. I just think if I'm the Niners and Commanders, I'm absolutely pounding the table depending on the price for a guy like this. Where I'm the Colts, I'm like, maybe if it's the right price, right? But they would get better. We know it's a fit. And the Eagles they always make moves, and they're trying to get better. They're a little underwhelming right now. Very underwhelming on offense, but on defense, they can't really get after the quarterback that consistently without Nolan Smith. They're going to get him back, but they still could use someone else with him. Again, I talked about it. Should they need a lot more than, compared to last year, obviously. Should they keep making these trades? I'm not going to pound the table saying they absolutely have to. Then some teams I'd say could happen. The Bears, pass rush is pretty much non-existent right now. There's a Hendrickson-Dennis Allen connection there, but should they be trading for an expiring deal when they're not they can be sneaky, but not a Super Bowl contender right now? It'd remind me of the Montez Sweat trade, which was, I said, very questionable at the time. It's looking even more questionable now. It's the non-contending team trading for an expiring contract. Just wait it out a little bit. But it could make sense where they get this better fit and a better pass rusher and cut Montez Sweat in the offseason and free some space. And they're giving up on that project, so I don't know. I don't know if the Bears are there to be trading for a player like this at the deadline. The Patriots could use another pass rusher. I wouldn't say they're desperate for one. The defense is balling out right now. Panthers, should they be trading for a veteran that's on an expiring deal? Or are they? I mean, they could. They were interested at one point, but should they be in the market? The Lions could be more so looking for corner, but this would be a great fit. You put them in there with Hutchinson, they're that much better. And then Seattle, if they continue to be a little beat up at the position, but they're going to get some guys back like DeMarcus Lawrence. We'll see how healthy Derek Hall could get. But if they have those guys on top of the other guys they have, then they're going to feel like they're set there. So that's a little bit more of a wild card. But that defense would get a big time boost with a guy like Hendrickson. So we have Trey Hendrickson up here, that top-notch edge rusher that teams that need an edge rusher will want at the deadline. But who's the next step down? If they can't deal for Hendrickson, they don't want to pay the premium price. The Bengals won't accept an offer. Watch for Malcolm Koonce, the Raiders edge rusher. Very productive a couple years ago. Looked promising, right, when he came in the league, even as a rotation guy, but worked his way up. Last year injured. This year, the new Raiders staff wasn't really sure. Give him a trial deal, one-year deal. Hasn't really worked out. Hasn't worked out for the Raiders in general. But watch for those expiring deal guys that are on the cheaper side where teams don't have to pay a premium. Would cost a day 3 pick. A very likely trade candidate. And once again, I look at the San Francisco 49ers, a team that very well should be in on Trey Hendrickson. But if they don't want to pay that price or the Bengals continue to be stubborn, they can't deal for him. Watch for Malcolm Koonce, a really good fit. Gus Bradley was the Raiders defensive coordinator when they drafted Koonce, so there's a connection there as well. So that would make a lot of sense. A cheaper draft pick for the Niners and a cheaper player here to land a pass rusher that they need. Obviously, the A-plus scenario is Hendrickson for the right price. Other teams, we talk about the Patriots possibly need an edge rusher, maybe more so a guy that could start or be a high-end rotation like Koonce rather than a big premium type player. We talked about the Commanders. We talked about the Bears. Should they be in the market of trading for a big pick for a big-time player like Hendrickson? Maybe this is a possibility. They don't have a ton of spending money either, but you could always clear. The Lions we talked about could use another body in there. The Panthers, similar to the Bears, and the Bears are a better team right now, but the Panthers, should they be paying a premium pick where they're at, maybe more a guy like Malcolm Kuntz. You could argue they have guys like this already, maybe go big or go home. Could be the approach as well. And there's a long list of teams that could use an edge rusher, but this is what stands out. I do like that Niners fit for a guy like Kuntz or another guy we're going to talk about in a second if they cannot land the big time, Trey Hendrickson. Another edge rusher, maybe for those teams that can't land Trey Hendrickson, a little cheaper, maybe a little more expensive than Malcolm Kuntz, but still a day 3 pick that is Titans edge rusher, Arden Key, who's a little versatile. He can rush from different alignments, a pretty underrated player. But yeah, some of those similar teams to watch for, that teams that need an edge rusher, more of a stand-up rusher. I look at the Patriots. This would be a really good fit. It has the Mike Vrabel connection. I feel like they could use, they're not desperate for an edge rusher because they have guys that can play. The defense is balling out right now. I just feel like they could use not only another body, but I think specifically a guy like Arden Key that can you could use with the current guys that you currently use because he can align in different spots. I mean, mainly he rushes off the edge, but you see him almost stand up in the middle as a blitzer technically. So I think they get really creative and it would mesh very well what they currently have. And they could use someone like that. So that's why the Patriots, in my mind, it would make sense. But he actually played for the Niners and he was pretty productive. That was the same year Robert Saleh left for the Jets. So it doesn't quite have that connection there, but it could work. I would watch for the 49ers for a lot of these edge rushers. So that's another team that I would put up there as well. Eagles, it would be a fit. Do they maybe a go big or go home type team? But right now they're struggling. It feels like they need, they need to get healthy first, and they got to figure out a lot of things right now, which is weird. The Commanders could use someone against Seattle, depending on injuries, and Carolina could use someone as well. But should they be trading away picks or keeping them will be the question. And again, probably more. A lot of teams always need a premium position off the edge. But Arden Key, like Malcolm Kuntz, not a huge name, but a good player, decent name to watch for leading up to that deadline. Here's a big one. Saints star receiver Chris Olave. I know what you're thinking. I'm thinking the same exact thing. Would the Saints actually trade Olave? And I think there's scenarios that make it possible, right? I'm not going to sit here and say count on it. If you are doubting it, then it's understandable. But a few things here. It's being reported that teams are interested in some of the Saints' notable veterans, and they're at least willing to listen. I've heard Alvin Kamara pop up. That might be a little less likely, believe it or not, just because of contract situations. What would teams actually offer? He wants to retire a Saint, etc. But teams are calling. They're willing to listen. Fast forward to the deadline. Let's say the Saints start stacking losses. I mean, right now they're fresh off a win. They actually might be better, a little bit better than their record shows. If they start to stack wins, they're probably most likely not going to trade Olave. But they start stacking losses. They have other receivers they added that they like. Maybe they'd be willing to move him for the right price if they can get something serious for him. And maybe Olave, I feel like there's a lot more that he has in him, right? So maybe he feels with the right place, the right home, so maybe he would want to go elsewhere. Not saying that for sure, but there's several reasons that this actually could happen. Now, a little bold to say the Bills, obviously, but I'm not saying the Bills are actually going to make this move. They honestly probably won't because they're very stubborn. Well, for multiple reasons, they're very stubborn and they typically rely on their homegrown guys for some reason. And a big thing for the Bills, why they rarely make the splash trades or additions and why they may not right now, is because they are always very, very, very low on cap space because the money they spent on their own guys. And that's the case right now at the bottom of the league. Here is why Chris Olave, if he is a trade candidate, is such a unique one. He is dirt cheap this year. Very cheap. I mean, he's still on his rookie contract. Got the option coming up next year. And then you have to give him a long-term extension. But a team like the Bills can't really afford anyone good enough to make a huge impact on their team. They could afford a guy like this. And they're a serious contender. You add Olave, they're that much better. It would give them that much-needed boost. Now, people are probably going to say they need defense. They don't need offense. Their defense kind of stinks. And for them to contend even more, they need better players on defense. But there's an issue with that because they don't have the spending money to get anyone very solid on defense. This is a rare situation with Olave. Yes, he plays offense, but he's very cheap for a big-time player. Who are they going to add on defense that they could actually afford? The guys that they could afford, they're going to put them on that defense, and it's not going to really do anything. It's still, the defense is going to be I'm not sitting here saying it's piss poor, but it's still going to be a little bit of an issue. This team's identity is offense. Being the best offense in football right now, it's a little underwhelming. And they're just not going out and getting good enough receivers. Shakir's solid, right? Keon Coleman's decent. He could get better. They need a sure thing guy that can get open and make big time plays for Josh Allen whenever he needs it. And that is Chris Olave, a rare scenario where they could actually afford a big time player that could give them that much of an impact. It would work so well on that team as well. And if it's a rental, then it's a rental. You're going for it all right now, this year, next year, whatever. So I want them to do it. Will they actually do it? They're a little stubborn. They can't afford much. They could afford this right now. We'll see. They're going to insist on their current receivers because they want them to develop more. Go get better. Go get better and win the damn thing. That's what they got to do. Other teams, the Patriots have been definitely a team to watch. They've been sniffing around for big-time receivers. They just haven't been able to land that guy yet. I mean, Diggs looks like a big-time addition, but they're looking for a guy to help them even more right now and long-term. We saw that all offseason. They just didn't make that happen besides Diggs. So they would definitely be in on it. The Steelers would be willing possibly to add a big-time receiver. They did trade for DK Metcalf already, so maybe that makes it a little less likely, but a totally different type of receiver, a position which they value very much. Maybe it's a little less likely in the Patriots, but I'd watch the Steelers. And then dark horse teams, the Raiders could use that guy of the future. They have that future spending money should they be in the market for trading for a guy the way they're playing right now, but they can use him long term as well. In the Niners, if Ayuk's just not coming back and they continue to have injuries and they don't want to spend big at the position, but again, he's very cheap right now, going to be somewhat affordable next year, but it's more of a dark horse because the Niners do have a number of solid receivers. It's just if they're healthy, that's the question. So something the Bills definitely should do. Will they actually do it? Maybe who's the most likely to do it? Maybe the Patriots are the most likely to do it. But this is a rare opportunity for the Buffalo Bills. Again, I don't think a realistic addition on defense because a guy like Trey Hendrickson's not realistic. I don't think they would do it anyways. A realistic addition on defense isn't going to really do anything for them. People probably don't realize that, but it's not really going to do much for them. This would right here. Breece Hall, the rumors are starting to get going again on him. I mean, there was a lot of talk, even going back to the draft this offseason. It was almost a surprise to some that he wasn't dealt. Here's the issue. The Jets like Breece Hall. He's playing very well right now. Braylon Allen went down to injury, so Breece Hall's the guy. The Jets could have a fire sale. There's teams that believe they're willing to trade off just about anyone. At the same time, Aaron Glenn, how competitive he is, he's going to try to make himself look better. He's going to try to win this year. And if you trade Breece Hall away with Braylon Allen out, it's going to be difficult, right? But he is on an expiring deal. Maybe that front office is going, we got to get something for him because he might leave us in free agency anyway. So that makes sense. I'm going to say the Chiefs, and this is another one of those situations where will the Chiefs actually do it? I think it's possible. Maybe a little more possible than the Bills pulling the trigger for Olave, but maybe they would be a little hesitant. They don't value the running back position enough, but their running game is so inconsistent, and you have a big-time pass-catching back right here. If the Chiefs got him, I mean, that it gives the Chiefs so much of a boost right here. So it's something that I would consider if I'm the Kansas City Chiefs, and maybe there's a world where they actually do it. Other teams to watch, the Cardinals have a running back situation. James Conner done for the year. Trey Benson out for a little bit. Even when he comes back, they could use a guy like this because he's just better than Trey Benson. So it's definitely possible. They just lost to the Titans. They're struggling. They're beat up. Should they be in the market for trading for an expiring contract? The Chargers, makes a lot of sense. It would give them a big-time boost. Najee Harris went down for the year. Hampton out for 4 weeks, possibly more, possibly 4 weeks. But the problem is Breece Hall wants to be like an every down or close to guy. When Hampton comes back in 4 weeks, he can't really be that guy. So that kind of makes them maybe closer to a dark horse. Texans, if Joe Mixon never comes back, they do like Chubb. They do like Winnie Marks, but the offense has just been underwhelming besides last week. The Commanders, I mean, they have a number of backs that can play. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt's taken off, but they're a little hesitant to give him the full load because he isn't a fantastic pass catcher, and they want to contend right now. They're trying to make the offense as good as they possibly can make it. They don't have Eckler right now, so I could actually see that, even though it's a dark horse for a reason. The Patriots, Gibson just went down. They're a little hesitant with Travion Henderson, so division rival trade. Could you see it? And the Bears been linked to running back since the draft. They haven't actually made the move for one, so you're starting to think like maybe they just don't want to do that, even though they probably should. But a dark horse team there. But yeah, do the Jets, Aaron Glenn, just want to keep him and just try to start winning football games? I definitely could see that. The Chiefs would benefit big time by adding him. Is it worth it for a team like the Cardinals or Chargers, given the circumstances? We'll see, but a lot of talk about Breece Hall right now. And we've talked about Kyle Duggar a ton already, so I'll make this quick, but another player I think the Chiefs should show some interest in. They're just, on defense, they just don't really feel quite the same. I feel like they're missing Justin Reed a little bit. Not that Duggar would fully replace him, obviously. Could he become available? Just thought of that. Could he become available and make his way back to the Chiefs? That's actually interesting thought there. Possibly. But I like the fit here. Downhill, potential blitz option, has that experience, man coverage experience. I think it'd be a really solid fit. The secondary just hasn't been super consistent for the Chiefs. I think they'd benefit by adding him. And the Commanders, since they lost Will Harris, they're trying some other pieces there, but I think this would be similarly used to how Dan Quinn and company used Jeremy Chin last year. So I think he would really fit that defense. Other teams I think would be a really good fit for the Bucs. They have some other options right now, so maybe it's not super likely anymore. Dark horse teams, the Vikings, he would fit Flores' defense. They don't really need it right now. The Lions are banged up at safety, and if they add another safety, they could use him in the box at times and Branch at strong safety, or Branch in the slot, and then Duggar at strong safety. Obviously, Kirby Joseph, free safety, but both those guys a little banged up right now. Nothing serious. Be a good fit for the Bengals. Should they be in the market for trading for guys? They just traded for Joe Flacco, so maybe, but it'd be a really good Al Golden fit. But mainly the Chiefs, and then maybe the Commanders for Duggar. Tariq Woolen's a guy that we talked about in that last trade deadline video as well. I mentioned the Lions could be a team to watch in that, and they still very much are. They badly need a corner. Maybe they don't want to pay a premium for Sauce Gardner. In my opinion, how great of a fit would this be? I mean, I think they can get the most out of him for sure. Are they going to be more of a go big or go home team? But there was rumors the Seahawks be willing to trade Tariq Woolen, but now they may not be because they're a little banged up, including Woolen in concussion protocol. At the cornerback position, so maybe they need to keep everything they got, so he might be removed off the candidate list, but he's still, because it's been obviously mentioned, legit reports, he's still a candidate. I look at teams like the Packers and the Colts, teams that could be in the market for a corner. They want a guy that can actually start for them if they need him to, but they also don't want to pay too much in terms of money and in terms of a draft pick compensation. So look at a team like the Packers. Nate Hobbs banged up a couple times since he arrived to Green Bay. And then when he goes down, look at that Cowboys game, the last time they played, the corner play was pretty brutal. Remember, they don't have Jair Alexander anymore. I mean, he was even out at times for them. So I think it's going to be a really good fit. I think they would get a lot more out of Woolen. He actually could elevate that weak spot on that Packers defense that could be really solid if they add a corner, and he wouldn't be overly expensive. And the Colts are supposed to be buyers when it comes to people talking edge, but I'd watch for corner. Xavier Howard retired. They then a little banged up here and there. I know Mekhi Blackman filled in last game, and he actually played well for them, but there's nothing guaranteed. They've been kind of sniffing around for corner. This one wouldn't be overly expensive. Could they go and get Sauce Gardner? Is it even possible? So I think it'd be a really good fit. Lou Anarumo, really good defensive coach. I think he would definitely get the most out of Woolen. He can get back on track playing the way he was when he was playing pretty solid football a few years ago. So Packers and Colts make a lot of sense for me to say, yeah, they should go out there and try to do that. We talked about the Lions a bit. I mean, the Eagles, I want to say, I think they would get the most out of him. I think he'd be pretty good in Fangio's defense. They badly need a corner. They maybe need more than one right now. It's pretty brutal. So I want to say the Eagles should definitely go and do this. I just don't like what I said it before in this video. They made some weird trades that haven't made an impact at all for them right now. So, they need a corner. They need a pass rusher. They need a defensive tackle. Offensive line's banged up. They got a situation that are maybe a distraction with those receivers. So, they need a tight end of the future. They can't run the ball as well right now. Could they trade for something like this and then that just fixes everything? I don't think so. And then should they be trading a ton of picks to trade for this guy, that guy, that guy? So I can't sit here and say I'm pounding the table for the Eagles to trade for more guys. They will trade. They'll make at least one trade by the deadline, but watch for them. Raiders, Pete Carroll, Seahawks connection there. The background, they definitely could use another corner, but should they be trading for a guy in their position? But definitely watch them. If the Seahawks are open to moving him to the Rams definitely could be interested, but maybe they won't be open to that. And the Ravens been a little banged up at the position. I want them to add a defensive tackle. Like, who is actually available that makes sense at D tackle? Harrison Phillips, he was already traded. Does he get traded again? It's a big question, but the Ravens already made a move. I like that move for Alohi Gilman. Love that move. They definitely could be a team that makes another trade or two, trading players away or bringing players in. We've seen them do that at that deadline. So a team to watch for some of these guys. And Raiders receiver Jakobi Meyers, there was talks right before the season started because he wanted to trade because he wasn't getting a contract extension. Now, the problem is I don't think there's many teams out there that would give him a contract extension right now, maybe eventually. But he's playing, so he's actually okay with it. The Raiders are struggling right now. Do they throw in the towel and trade a guy that was already a known trade candidate? It's definitely possible. I mean, with Bowers out, and them not being incredible at the receiver position, they kind of need Meyers if they're going to try to win. And old school Pete Carroll probably going to continue to try to win. So that'd be the argument against them actually trading Meyers. But there's some teams that could use a receiver. I like the fit of the Pittsburgh Steelers and Atlanta Falcons, teams that I think should consider this for the right price, though. The Raiders might ask for too much. Do you trade a third-round pick for this? A little bit of a question. A fourth, I would do it. But I think a really good fit to pair with DK Metcalf for the Steelers. Yes, Calvin Austin's been playing pretty solid. I think a little banged up going into this week. They get even better. A guy that could dominate the slot, but also could play outside, but totally different type of receiver as what they have really. And they're serious right now. They got a good win right before the bye. They're coming off the bye right now. That people still saying, the odds say the Ravens are still going to win that division, even though the Steelers are way ahead of them. The Bengals are a little banged up. The Steelers they got to pull away and get this done and be more of just a borderline playoff team that they've been in the past. So this would be a pretty good move. I would really like the fit. And the Falcons, for multiple reasons here, Darnell Mooney just cannot get healthy. He can't get healthy, cannot stay healthy. Maybe he's a good player if he's fully healthy. So in the Falcons offense, if you watch them, they want to use as many receivers as possible in that offense. They don't have that right now. So add someone for Michael Penix, Drake London, etc. I know Mooney, but even when Mooney's back and finally fully healthy, will he stay healthy? But even when he is, you use all these guys. So this is a really good fit. Again, a guy that can play inside and out. It's a move the Falcons definitely could make sure, because their offense has so much potential to be explosive. It's just not consistent right now. This can help it get there for sure. It can help Michael Penix grow more. Others to watch, Patriots back there. Maybe they could use another body. Maybe it's go big or go home for them. In the Niners, definitely could be interested if they continue to suffer these injuries that they can't get healthy. When they get healthy, they get they injured again. And is Ayuk ever coming back? There's a lot of questions there. So this would the more I talk about that, maybe. But the 49ers got good players if they can get and stay healthy. But I love the fits of Pittsburgh and Atlanta there for Jakobi Meyers. So fun video, another trade deadline video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Who would you like your team to get, or what do you think happens? I would love to see any of that talk in the comments like always. We have full NFL coverage, all kinds of videos every single week. We'll be covering the trade deadline fully. Everything NFL, we got you. So like, subscribe, turn notifications on. Very important to follow us on Twitter. Links pinned in the comments for anything that's important. That'll do it. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.